to Things Are Getting Strange, a Lone Gunmen rewatch podcast, but dear God, do we wish we weren't.
You're not really hiding your cards anymore, are you?
I think it was until we got to the first episode today we could just about go with it, and then Blair.
So you're broken now?
I'm pretty broken. But I'm Nick.
Yeah, that's fair. You are definitely Nick.
You're not going to introduce yourself?
Oh, Philip, did we not do that?
No, we didn't, so it sort of just veered off immediately, so...
Ah, fair enough. You are Nick, and I am Kim.
That is correct. And do you have any news?
I don't have any news for you this week, but I did try to get you some, shall we say, input from our social medias.
Okay.
Because you've been asking at the end of the last couple of episodes for people to come back and tell you why they like the Lone Gunmen series.
Yes.
I tried to goad them into it a bit by saying, please give me counter-arguments to throw at Nick. And I got one person to reply.
Feeling kind of vindicated right now.
We have found when asking people for their negative opinions on the X-Files before, because we're kind of approaching fandoms and, nobody wants to say anything negative about something they love, it is harder to get people to say what they don't like than what they do.
It's true.
The person who has come back to us, it is X-Files The Virtual Episodes on Twitter. Their Twitter username is at XF_Lost Episodes, if you're looking for them. But their feeling was that the Lone Gunmen was just released far too long after the heyday for it ever to become popular. But they go on to agree that after pilot they kind of dropped the ball a bit. They felt that the series isn't actually that funny, but they're trying to lean into comedy too much, which is what we've said about all the butt stuff, basically.
Yeah, I've been having thoughts along those lines this week, so we'll get into that in a bit.
However, they did counter that by saying the cast does a great job with what they have, the theme music is killer, and they did say that the series does find its balance around the Tango de los Pisteros episode, which is episode 10, though they admit that is really a bit too little too late.
Yeah, and I barely remember that episode at all, so this is going to be interesting.
But you've still got a bit to go, because what are we on now? Episodes
It's 5 and 6.
5 and 6?
Yeah.
So you've got a few more to go before you hit the point where Virtual Episodes is telling you it gets better.
Okay. Oh, it's a bit awkward.
But yeah, anyway, thank you for actually coming back and giving
Yes.
Nick a counter-argument there. He has been looking for it for a while.
I just want to understand, because... Okay, so I think we'll head on to the first episode, because I think what I sort of been thinking over the last week is largely relevant to Three Men in a Smoking Diaper rather than Madam I'm Adam.
These are the two episodes we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, though Madam I'm Adam has a whole different issue to it. But well, anyway, we'll go for the first episode.
So this is Three Men and a Smoking Diaper.
Yes. Directed by Brian Spicer, written by Chris Carter, who isn't getting his musical sting anymore because this isn't funny. This is really quite astonishingly bad.
This is Chris Carter trying to do humour, though.
Which we know he can do. This is one of the things I was going to come back to later, is the case of we know he can write comedy, and everyone who defends Postmodern Prometheus because it's really funny is that it would be funnier if the central conceit wasn't so terrible.
Mm.
But we know he can do comedy, but apparently on the strength of this episode he can't. First podcast on the 23rd of March 2001. So guest stars, Enid Ray Adams played Brenda Sally. This would be not Elaine from Seinfeld.
Oh, that woman that looks just like Elaine.
It does. She does. Okay, so this is one of the ones where it starts weird, gets weirder, and then ends inevitably.
Okay.
So she's in My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic.
Okay.
No one you recognise again.
All right.
Kindergarten Cop 2.
I didn't know there was
neither
one.
did I. It came out in 2016. Oh my god.
Really?
Yeah.
Does it have Schwarzenegger in it?
No.
Huh.
As far as I can tell. I thought just the title, it's like that joke about Anaconda 3. There's an Anaconda 2?
There's 4 of them.
Dead Like Me. And, of course, Final Destination 2.
Is she?
Yep. So, Mitchell Kosterman played the mustachioed officer.
Fair enough.
He's previously been in Genderbender, Sleepless, The List, and Travellers.
Oh, really?
He'll show up in Millennium, and he was in White Noise.
Okay.
Lindsay Bowen was a producer who will show up in Millennium and was also in Two Shy and Kill Switch.
Okay.
Sean Allen was the field reporter who was in War of the Coprophages and Watchmen. Candace Churchill was singer number 1. Sadly, singer number 2 and 3, while credited, did not do anything of terrible note. But singer number 1 was in Jennifer's Body.
Okay.
She'll return in the X-Files Season 11 episode, which I can't pronounce. That one.
Is it the one that's a string of letters
Yep.
and numbers? Yep.
And House. Daniel Bacon was a technician. Lovely character names for these people, isn't it? Who will show up in Millennium. Was in Longlegs.
Oh, okay.
The Day the Esther Stell remake. And Dead Like Me again. Another oddly recurring on here. And this got really weird. So Carolyn Tweedle played the nurse. She's meant to be stern nurse, but there's only one nurse in this wretched episode. She was in Shinga and Elegy. She will show up in Millennium. She was in The Mouth of Madness as a nurse. Dreamcatcher. And Prom Night 4.
Wow, there's a Prom Night 4.
Yes, there is a Prom Night 4.
Okay, do you have a synopsis for this one?
I do, from the fan wiki, and I think I'm looking out on this because it's actually 5 paragraphs long.
That's pretty short for them.
It is. Okay. The Lone Gunmen investigate Senator Jefferson during his re-election campaign with allegations that he murdered the woman Barbara Bonabo he was having an affair with. After sabotaging a press conference, a campaign worker secretly starts giving information to the Lone Gunmen. Jimmy, a supporter of the senator, is asked to volunteer as a campaign worker to identify the informant. Meanwhile, the trio follow the leads to an apartment where they find an unsupervised baby, the result of the senator's indiscretion. While Jimmy works his way into the senator's confidence, Frohike is left to take care of the child, eventually enlisting the help of Eves Adel Harlow. With the election only days away, Jimmy comes up with a plan to identify the informant by serving coffee to the other workers and then collecting the cups for fingerprinting. Although a match is found, Jimmy mistakenly names the wrong person, Brenda Sally, and the Lone Gunmen confront her with their findings. The senator meets the Lone Gunman, unaware that his mistress has taken tranquilizers that caused her death in a car crash, or that she had given birth to a son. His campaign manager, Busfield, confesses that he was the one who had swept everything under the rug, and that he was also the one leaving the clues behind. The senator is very understanding with everyone, including the campaign manager. He goes public with the news. The senator visits the office where he picks up his son, who he names William Jefferson. In a surprise turn of events, the television shows the senator gaining in the election results, ultimately winning re-election despite the scandal.
Thank you.
One thing about this episode was we watched this in UK time, like early evening of the 5th of November 2024. We were recording this on the 10th of November 2024, and it can't be helped but the episode hits a bit differently now.
Yeah, a major thing happened in that space of time.
And I think the thing that is absolutely infuriating to see in Lone Gunmen, and also saw in real life, was the whole, it doesn't matter what this guy did, we're still going to vote for him.
Interestingly, they are very careful not to say whether this guy is a conservative or a Democrat over the course of the episode. We noticed watching it, it's things like his campaign posters are in both red and blue.
Yeah, it's very hedging its bets for some reason.
However, he's quite blatantly based on Bill Clinton.
It's the saxophone that gives it away.
Yeah, and the whole entire plot revolving around him being promiscuous, let's say.
Yeah. But I think the problem with the episode, and as outside observers, we can go for, hours on some other political things of late, but it's the episode doesn't get down to what this guy is saying as a senator. It's all about his personal life, which I'm not saying doesn't have an effect on this, because they do think he's murdered his lover. But even when that's cleared up at the end and the Lone Gunmen are suddenly really cheering for him, it's that, so what was his policies?
The whole portrayal of the senator in this episode is supposed to link in with the Bill Clinton body count urban legend.
Okay.
So this was a popular urban legend that reared its head both when Bill Clinton came into power and also when Hillary ran.
Okay.
But it's the idea that there were 50 or so people who they had secretly murdered, who would have otherwise caused problems for them or opposed their kind of run into Congress. Do we say Congress? I'm not very good on American terms.
I can't. The Senate. It's the Senate he's going for.
Into the Senate, right.
Clinton would have been the presidency, but this was the Senate, is this one.
But this list is kind of fascinating when you read down it, because it's even on Wikipedia, this list of people he supposedly had assassinated. they all died in completely unconnected ways, ranging from drug overdoses to plane crashes. And it was also Twitter trolls kind of stirred the pot a bit on there by falsifying these tweets from other famous people to make it look like they tweeted that they knew that Bill Clinton was guilty of something, in the days before they died.
Yeah.
And these people included things like Queen Elizabeth II of England, Kobe Bryant, the then president of Japan, just people of this ilk. And of course, because people always do believe political conspiracy theories, no matter how crazy they are, people believe this.
Queen Elizabeth, well-known user of Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm not sure she even knows what Twitter was. Sorry.
Was,
yes. I don't think she ever is. Okay, that explains a few things, but it's absolutely bananas.
But that's why the Lone Gunmen are looking into this theory that he murdered someone in his employ at the start.
Yeah. Where I come unstuck, though, and it's kind of Madam and Adam sort of does us the inverse, is that they make a big thing of non-interference in the next episode and writing a story and being reporters. In this, they are crashing a news conference.
Yeah.
They're crashing a live interview on TV and intercepting the things. What is going on? And again, it's that we don't know what the senator is standing for. They seem to just care that he's rumoured to have killed his mistress.
Yeah, that's all you have.
That's all we have, and that's all they have, because they have nothing.
Mm.
And they're going to crash this news conference, and it just feels odd. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about is, again, no one who writing for the series actually seems to understand the central concepts. But Chris Carter, being one of the named 4 people who created the TV series, should have a better handle on this.
True, yep.
Someone who's written for Lone Gunmen for multiple years, showrun the series they come from, and doesn't seem to understand the characters or what they do, because they're not crusading political ideals. I mean, Byers is. Byers is a political idealist.
To a lesser degree, Jimmy as well.
Yeah, but the rest of them don't care. It's hard to see Langley caring about this, isn't it?
I feel you kind of introduced how they feel a bit better in like Water for Octane, in that bit at the start when they were kids.
Yes.
Where you have Byers saying, I want to grow up to be a bureaucrat and I'll change the world.
Yeah.
Versus Langley wanting to become essentially an early dot-com millionaire.
And Frohike wanted to be a crusading journalist.
Mm.
Yeah. So, yeah, and it's the... If you have this cheat sheet for their characters in this other episode, and you're ignoring it for this episode, I don't understand what's going on anymore.
Mm. I really can't argue with that.
Well, thank you. And then I think the central mystery of the episode is also they forget about it, because you've got this someone has written this, not a useful clue. They've written a prescription for tranquilizers onto the windshield of their van.
Yeah.
And somehow figures out that they can then trace that back to figure everything else out.
Mm.
Okay, well, I mean, it works, but is that really the best way of doing it? Because they kind of invoke Deep Throat, because of course you invoke Deep Throat, and Jimmy has the other interpretation of Deep Throat.
Of course he would, he's got 2 brain cells.
Well, that's fair. But I don't understand, the campaign manager who actually is betraying the senator, or would-be senator, is... he does all the other cover-ups and everything. He's not really trying to defy him, is he?
No, true.
He actually just goes along with all of it.
Mm.
So it's very peculiar.
It's another strange episode because we've said before, and even our good friend on Twitter earlier commented on the fact that they lean too far into this kind of not funny humour.
Yeah.
But a lot of the humour in this episode is centred around Jimmy again.
Yes.
So you, even starting from the kind of slapstick at the start where they put the kind of fingerprint lifting glue on his hands and he sticks to every surface he touches and winds up trailing dozens of envelopes with him.
Yeah, it's... I've seen comedy films where this can be done, but there are ways of making this funny.
But I'm also going to go down to the language used, because there is a very brief bit which hinges on... I want to call it a transphobic joke, but it's so badly done it's not even really that.
Yeah, it's kind of Jimmy sort of latching onto misunderstanding the word angina
it's clearly inferring that he doesn't believe that the senator has female genitalia, but he believes that people are trying to fool him into thinking that. And it's just a really weird exchange that maybe only lasts a few lines, but at the same time it's like, what the hell are you doing, man? This isn't funny in any way.
No, and I think the frustrating thing is it then puts him on kind of the right route, because then he's implying he knows the correct thing for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
And it's just, Jimmy just is annoying as a concept.
I think it's one of those jokes that it's supposed to be like two people talking at cross purposes.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't quite work, and I don't understand how... was it Carter that actually wrote the script for this one?
Oh, Carter wrote the whole thing.
Yeah, it's how do you misunderstand how these kind of exchanges work when you see them in comedy films all the time?
Yeah, and again, it's not like he's not written funny episodes of The X-Files, and the other people involved in this series haven't written funny episodes. To go along with the comedy lines for a bit further, though I think actually, because we touched on going into him being sent into the senator's campaign, is you made the excellent point that, first off, Lone Gunmen would usually get Mulder to do this unless he's too high profile that it doesn't work. Or Byers is your personable front, like in the Three of a Kind. He was the face man in that.
Yeah.
And the fact they keep using Jimmy, who can't be relied to do literally anything.
In a normal situation, you'd totally rely on Byers to do this. This is his ballpark.
Yes, it's baffling.
But I feel in this series we've kind of sidelined Byers more than anybody else. Because Frohike, we've determined, is inherently funny in certain situations just because he's an older, very diminutive, very grumpy man.
Yeah.
And Langely, just because Langely is so socially awkward, you can feed humour around that.
Yeah.
Byers just has nothing to do, whereas in the episodes like Three of a Kind and the Unusual Suspects, he's the straight man.
Yes, well, I think you might have hit on the interesting point there, is that both of those episodes at their core are actually about Byers rather than the other two.
Yeah.
Because it's about his would-be romance with Suzanne Medeski.
True.
And he doesn't, ultimately he is unfulfilled, but it sets him on the path he's currently on as the crusading journalist. And the other two are kind of his psychic. So now they've actually got a series, and Suzanne presumably said, no, I don't want to be in a spin-off series or something, because they couldn't get her in.
But even without Suzanne, the pilot episode is about Byers again.
It's true, with his dad. Yeah. That's a very interesting point, in that they run out of plot lines for Byers already.
Because they've introduced Jimmy.
Because they've introduced Jimmy, and Jimmy is a more typical straight man, even though you've given him intelligence that's a quarter of what the rest of them is.
Yeah.
If not worse.
It's weird. We introduced originally Jimmy as someone that the Lone Gunmen could explain things to.
Yeah.
But for some reason, his IQ has diminished from being that of a 7-year-old to that of a peanut over about 4 episodes.
That's an excellent point. That, as you said, that was why Jimmy was introduced in Bond, Jimmy Bond.
Mm.
But they're not doing that with him anymore.
No.
Or they do occasionally, like the stuff they cut his hand with. They sort of said from a friend in the FBI, and we can infer that's Mulder or Scully who would have given it to him. But you don't explain anything else to him across the episode. Or if you do, he doesn't understand it either. I
feel a lot of it is things that you don't even really need to explain. Like in Water for Octane, where they explained that they'd found the registration number for a shipping container and stuff like that. You don't need Jimmy there, just say, hey, that could be a registration number for a shipping container, let's look it up.
Yeah. So I think you're right, they don't know what to do with Byers, and I don't think they actually know what to do with Jimmy either, but put them head to head in a script, and Jimmy wins out because he's the more typical leading man that apparently Chris Carter's more comfortable writing.
I guess more classically handsome.
Yeah.
If you're attracted to people who are less intelligent than the average golden retriever.
Brutal, but fair. I mean, it's even like, I think the frustrating thing is you then set up Jimmy having a good idea with the coffee thing, and then just mucking up because he's got the wrong person with the wrong cup.
Yeah.
And it's, why? Why did you do that? Because he could have just sent them to the right person, because sending them to the wrong person adds 2 minutes of extra time to the story, I think.
I think it was on the basis of, well, if it's not that person, it's that one.
Yeah.
The only other guy in the episode.
But it's like 2 minutes of extra screen time is taken up because they finger the wrong person. It's not useful to actually have that misdirect.
You need a misdirect like that if the delay would cause problems. So say they mistook it was, I've forgotten every character's name in this.
Brenda, I think.
They went tailing after Brenda because they made that mistake. They didn't realise that the other guy was lining up to assassinate the senator or something like that.
Yeah, something more...
And then you have the race up the clock tower to stop him.
Okay, so there are two other areas I think we need to cover because they do bear talking about.
Okay.
One is we'll return to the humour because there's a whole chunk of this we didn't get into, which is why Frohike needs to see the doctor urgently so that Langely can look up a prescription on the computer.
Correct. More butt stuff.
More butt stuff because he has horrible gas in a absolutely absurd scene that goes on for far too long. And of course, it's Frohike who has to suffer through this again. Why?
It's that awful flatulent scene where at least it has the saving grace when you're wondering what the hell is happening to Frohike in the next room to show he's making noises with a hot water bottle.
Yeah. At the same time, it's... Why? Must we do this?
It's such juvenile humour. It's something that I'd expect, like, maybe a 6-year-old boy would find entertaining.
Yeah, and this was one of the things I was really grappling with, is I don't understand how you can have done the show running for the X-Files for 7 or 8 series, because I think I got the time slightly wrong, and season 8's happening parallel to this. Or
yes.
just about.
In fact, I think the next episode, if I remember correctly, is running parallel with Dead Alive.
Yes, which
to
is
show you
hysterical.
where it was.
Which is an hysterical mistake to make.
But it shows you where we are kind of in the timeline.
Chris Carter has written episodes that are more humorous. As much as we have problems with Postmodern Prometheus, you can see where the jokes were. And it's actually kind of highbrow. We will always fixate on your central premise is abhorrent, but you've constructed an actual humorous framework around that. If it didn't have that problem with it, we'd sort of say, this is a great episode. Unfortunately, we can't. But he knows how to do that, and I'm sure he's written some other, there's been other quips and humorous bits in other episodes he's done. It's not all dour or anything, is it?
He does have a kind of notoriety for writing the sadder X-Files episodes.
Yeah. Because
usually he helms the conspiracy-based ones, which tend to be the more melancholic X-Files episodes.
Yeah. But it's not... He has written humorous stuff before, and it's not lowbrow humour, is it?
No, not like this. I don't really understand the decision to make the Lone Gunmen such kind of juvenile humour.
No, and it's... Because, whilst I was thinking this is an explicit spin-off of the X-Files. This isn't Millennium, which exists in a very strange parallel.
Yeah.
And Millennium is also meant to be darker than the X-Files ever gets. But you got Lone Gunmen, an explicit spin-off from the X-Files, and given it a level of juvenile humour, sub what the X-Files would pull, and you feel the audience is going to go with that? I mean, the audience figures for this series were surprising, because they're higher than I thought they were going to be. Because I thought it'd be cratering around now, and it is how anyone thought this level of humour was okay. And it's especially when you've got Shaban we can't rely on. Spotnitz appears to let Chris Carter do whatever he wants. But Gilligan knows what he's doing.
I've said it before that, especially when it comes to writing characters, Gilligan is the best.
Yeah, and I haven't looked it up because I want it to be a surprise if we're getting an episode that Gilligan does solo. And I do wonder if that's a Tango episode. Because if that's an uptick, it's got to be that. If not, if he's going to write any of the other episodes, we're going to have to say something was in the water when they were working on this, because I don't know how you managed to get Vince Gilligan to pull this kind of stuff.
I think quintessential, even if you take things like the excellent Breaking Bad out the running, Drive is the quintessential Gilligan episode, where a lot of the episode is just Mulder talking to another man.
Yeah.
And it's completely compelling.
But then he also did Bad Blood, which is also one of the funniest episodes.
Yeah.
So Gilligan, if they'd sort of said The Lone Gunmen's going to be a comedy series, he shouldn't have any problem.
Yeah.
So, and also, he's one of the showrunners, so what's going on? Did everyone just defer to Chris Carter because they've been deferred to him on the main series or something? Said, oh no, this would be great. No, it's not, Chris.
I think the other thing that we've skirted around talking about
Oh,
is the
yeah,
actual flipping baby.
Yes, and I was going to come out to that wholeheartedly with one is, of course, we're doing this with Frohike again, and we have to talk about Eves, because what in the hell is going on?
Well, starting from the start, you have that god-awful sequence of Frohike and Langely, who apparently have never seen a baby in their life, trying to figure out why the baby is crying and deal with dirty nappies and all the rest of it, or diapers for our American audience. It's just painful.
It is, well, again, it's like, it feels juvenile again. This feels like something you would get on, what's a children's comedy, like Round the Twist, maybe.
Yeah, I can see it's around the twist, sort of.
And you'd when you watch Round the Twist, because you're 12 or 13, 12, 11, 12, 13 now, whatever age, it's funny because it's adolescents who are out of their depth trying to cope with a situation they're not prepared for.
I think so. Round the Twist, of course, was based on the books of Paul Jennings that were really popular when I was maybe about 8 to 10 years old.
Yeah, and made by the Children's TV Workshop in Australia or something.
But Paul Jennings notoriously was always a bit jaded by how many of his popular books revolved around scatological humour, which kids find hilarious.
Yes.
And of course, Round the Twist also fed into that with these surrealist plots that are kind of almost based around puberty, but at the same time are all kind of gross and supernatural.
Yeah, it's on reflection, there's a lot of puberty stuff in Round the Twist that you wouldn't think about. I wouldn't have really picked up on at the time.
The Whirly Willy springs to mind, and people should Google that. They really, really should if they are not unfamiliar with the Round the Twist Whirly Willy episode.
Well, I think there was also some explicit stuff because there was a whole thing about the daughter needing a bra and how the father was struggling with that and had to get someone else to go and take her shopping.
Well, I even remember one of Paul Jennings' stories, because I had a load of them as a kid, is all about growing pubic hair and being bullied for it in school. You know, they're all around that age group and things that you would have been familiar with as a young teen reading them.
Yeah. So this is not a disparagement of Round the Twist at all, because I think it's a very well executed series, but it's one I haven't ever chosen to revisit, and I think it probably would suffer a bit. At that age group, though, it was absolutely fine and really good. Everyone enjoyed it. Everyone liked Round the Twist.
Oh yeah, when we were young, you just rushed home from school to see it.
Yeah.
It was an absolutely hysterical series, which shows the weirdness that if Lone Gunmen, a series aimed at adults, has the same kind of humour.
Yeah, that's it's really uncomfortable, and it just feels like, I don't know if the Lone Gunmen are meant to be exactly pop culture savvy, but there is an element of pop culture savviness to them. They're not detached in a way that you could expect Mulder to be.
Yeah.
So you must have seen some films with caring for children. You probably watched Three Men and a Baby. Let's not kid ourselves that this is the kind of thing they probably have run across in their lives.
But even, and admittedly I haven't seen it since I was younger, but Three Men and a Baby is funnier than this.
Yes. Three Men and a Baby, while has the whole, men who aren't prepared to look after a child, I think they get the hang of it a lot faster.
Yeah.
It's a complete disruption to how they want to run their lives, because 3 bachelors in an apartment, they used to having bachelor parties, and now they've got to be fathers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't watched it now. It's directed by Leonard Nimoy, of all people.
Is it really?
It is.
But compare this, where Frohike and Langely have built what I can only call a saw torture device to feed a baby.
Yeah, and then keep it occupied and everything else. But then it's Frohike's solution is to call Eves in.
Because she's the only woman they know.
Yeah. And it's absolutely hilarious that you say that next episode is going to be adjacent to Dead Alive.
Yeah.
Because you didn't think the woman who's going to be pregnant shortly, who lives literally down the road, who will have been learning everything she can about motherhood, might be a better pick than the mercenary who's out for money.
I'm going to assume that the person you are referring to, who of course is Dana Scully, would arrest them on the spot.
Absolutely, because that's the other thing the episode doesn't grapple with, is they have literally kidnapped this child.
And it's a high-profile kidnapping. We have kidnapped the senator's child.
And no one mentions it once. It's... Again, I think this comes back to your whole juvenile comedy, because again, Round the Twist, or some other children's comedy series, you would wave away the actual legal implications of what you do in this.
Because it's a kid's show.
Because it's a kid's show, you don't really want to get into it that impedes the comedy. You don't have any excuse in Lone Gunmen. They have kidnapped a child, and no one calls them on it. And until the senator shows up to collect it, apparently the Lone Gunmen are just going to hang on to this child that they've taken from this dead woman's apartment. Not called child safety services or anything.
But to get back to Eve as well, is we've portrayed Eve previously as being our kind of femme fatale character. She's massively competent, she's ruthless, and just melts at the sight of a wickle baby.
Yeah, it's like Eve's, why, how? This isn't you.
You even wind up with her going to these kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Postnatal class with Frohike?
Yeah, it's not doula, is it? It'll be postnatal, so it is some kind of parenting thing, isn't it?
Which involves Frohike, of course, wearing fake breasts to breastfeed his baby to become closer to her.
Yeah.
Well, him, sorry. It's a boy we find out at the end, isn't it?
And we made the point last time that we thought it was going to be Lone Gunmen as one unit and Jimmy and Eves as another. And this time we actually... Yeah, I was wrong. So we have Eves and Frohike going off together.
With Jimmy and Byers on the other side.
Yeah, and Langley just kind of around. But Eves previously has been portrayed as an intelligent person. She's a mercenary, she's very calculating, she's in it for the money. She doesn't call Frohike's very bad excuse for why the child is there into question once, until he inadvertently lets it sleep that this is in fact the senator's child. Apparently no one understands Eves.
I'm assuming there's a meme somewhere on the internet, it might even be like an XKCD comic or something, about how people's intelligence reduces due to proximity to cats.
That's XKCD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The same comic strip applies to Eves and babies, apparently, where she loses all intelligence as she gets closer to a baby.
It's just absolutely... What are we doing?
Mm.
This is not the character that you introduced in the pilot episode.
Mm.
Or Bon Jimmy Bond. Or like Wad for Octane. I'm not sure who this woman is. Because I cannot see the woman who likes firing Uzis in leather pants going to a postnatal class with Frohike to practice breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Ugh. And the ending feels just so... I don't know, is it flippant or is it just uncaring? The fact the senator could now show up and say, I want my child back. And then his campaign manager seems to be stepping in as another mother because he was cooing at the baby earlier. And it's just no one is human about or known as an adult in this.
Well, and the fact that whatever this senator stands for, as you said at the start of the episode, it must be something particularly good because he's got all these scandals behind him now and he's still fine.
Yes, so then again, I would say, again, the gap between when we watch this and when we record this is that someone else has proven that people don't care, apparently.
No.
I mean, and also, though, that the senator's crimes in this one, except for the murder, which he turns out he didn't do, are small potatoes. Sure, he had some affairs and is a drunkard, but there can be worse.
And again, we note the fact that apparently Chris Carter supported the Bill Clinton campaign. This episode would have originally aired just a few months after George W. Bush became president, I believe.
Yes.
So you've probably got some feelings there that even though we didn't specifically say that this guy was a Democrat, I'm sure there are some feelings he probably is meant to be.
He's probably meant to be. I think you're right, though. He's been carefully done, so he kind of reads both ways, and the saxophone thing is just the edge to point out he is him.
And also why we haven't focused on what he actually stands for or anything.
Yeah, and I think we said at the start, and I'll sort of reiterate it again, is that part that really jars, because that's Lone Gunmen's entire thing, is the actual political, what you stand for and what you're going to do to the American public.
Yeah.
And the fact that apparently they don't care about that. And also they're hijacking this interview on TV, which is just, that's not what you do.
While I agree that's not what they do, I believe their standpoint coming in is they are government conspiracy theorists, and we're getting in on the body count conspiracy.
All true, but you generally don't intervene in the actual events, especially if you want to be a journalist as well.
Mm.
I mean, I will say Hunter S. Thompson is the exception to this because he practices Gonzo Journalism, which is yes, you can interfere with the events, and
They're not Gonzo journalists.
not Gonzo journalists, no. Very few people are Gonzo journalists, it must be said. Do we have anything else for this wretched thing, or shall we just talk about alien abductions? Kind of.
Please, let's move on. I never want to speak about it again.
So, Madam I. Madden, directed by Brian Spicer, written by Thomas Schnauz. We have a theory, which we're waiting to see if it pans out, of if the episode is written by one of the showrunners, or all of the showrunners, except for the pilot, it's going to be bad. If it's written by someone else, it's probably at least going to be bearable. This episode, it kind of shows up the pattern so far, but we'll see how it continues. But first broadcast on the 30th of March 2001. So, the major guest star in this is Stephen Tobolowsky, who played Adam Burgess.
Okay.
Right, so we should have recognised him, because we said he's familiar, and I said, oh, I think he's in Sneakers. Which he is in Sneakers, but that's not what you remember him for. So he's an upcoming film called Freakier Friday, which is the new sequel to Freaky Friday.
Okay.
He was in the original.
The original one with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah. Not the old one, the 2000s one.
Okay.
So he's in. They're filming Freakier Friday. He's in that.
Oh, fair enough.
Atlas Shrugged. Who is John Galt?
Gosh.
I love doing that one. Lorax. Okay, but stuff you should remember him for. Community.
Okay.
He's the professor who's doing the lesson on Who's the Boss.
Angela.
But he's that guy.
Fair enough.
He was in the Lorax. I said Lorax. He's in Beethoven's Big Break, which I only bring up because Beethoven is one of David Duchovny's early roles before the X-Files.
But I presume this is
way down
a few
the line.
sequels down the line.
I think this is when they've dispensed with almost all of the original
Fair
cast and you're down to the dregs. He was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I did not know this one.
Okay.
Principal Flutie.
Yeah.
The guy who was eaten by hyenas.
Oh, is he Flutie?
He's Flutie.
He only lasts about 4 episodes.
Yeah, and then you get Armin Shimmerman in instead, but that's him. Still going into the bits you should remember him for, though. Memento, where he's Sammy Jenkins.
Oh, right, yeah.
An Alan Smithy film, Burn Hollywood Burn. But one of the ones we should actually have said right out, Groundhog Day. He's Ned Ryerson.
Oh, of course
Bing.
he is. Yeah.
Sneakers, obviously. Basic Instinct was a surprise.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Memoirs of an Invisible Man. I think the John Carpenter film you haven't seen.
I haven't seen that one, no.
Yeah. Thelma and Louise. He was, of course, in an episode of Seinfeld. He's the spirit healer who turns George purple.
Oh, yeah.
Before they crash the ambulance.
Yeah.
Spaceballs. Debbie Lee Carrington played Sadie Muckle. She was in Dexter.
Okay.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but under heavy prosthetics. Men in Black, under heavy prosthetics. Seinfeld, in the episode where Kramer's friend is taking heightening drugs.
Oh, is it the girl that Mickey likes?
Yeah. Batman Returns, where she played the Emperor Penguin. And so under heavy prosthetics. But you've actually seen her in something in Total Recall with the infamous little person who sort of stabs someone in the crotch and then starts shooting people in the whichever fight that was towards the end of the film. Oh, this is the Paul Verhoeven Total Recall, not that other one. She's in both Ewoks films, because of course she is, like Warwick Davis.
I forgot there were Ewoks films.
And Return of the Jedi, where she also was an Ewok, so she reprised that for 3 films.
Okay.
Marie Stillen plays Lois DeVico. She was in Sanguinarium.
She just one of the nurses?
I think so. David Bloom played Weary Man number 2. He was in Tunguska. He was the diplomat who was carrying the black oil sample.
Oh, right.
Though he was credited as Nervous Man, not
Fair
diplomat. Arnie Walters played a preacher. He was in Gethsemane, Redux 2 and All Souls. And he was also going to show up in Millennium. Casey Dubois was a little boy who was in Snakes on a Plane.
Fair enough.
David Thompson, who was Man with Net, was in Genderbender.
Okay.
He was one of the actual brothers. Would you like to tell us who Adam is?
Not really, but I will.
Okay.
A man returns to his home in Surf City, Maryland. He finds his key under the flower pots and enters the house, watching television, getting a beer and a few other things. As he leaves the shot, another man enters his house to find the television on. We go through a few motions where the two men move around the house just missing each other for a while. Eventually, the initial man undresses and crawls into bed, snuggling up against the woman he finds there. Not seeing the first man, the second man also arrives and does the same thing. However, as the first man talks, he realises finally that there is a stranger in his house. He turns on the light as he and his wife burst out of bed, as the original man stares and looks at them in confusion, saying, "Who are you people and what are you doing in my bed?" We cut after the credits to the Lone Gunmen, specifically Byers and Jimmy, who are in a diner in Washington, D.C. Jimmy's really excited because he's taken a call for a potential story, and if they run it, it means that he'll get his name in the paper. They sit down with the first man who appeared in the opening sequence, who is called Adam Burgess. He explains to them that he is a victim of identity theft, quite literally because his entire life has been stolen from him. He explains to them about what happened at the start of the episode, and shows them a copy of the Lone Gunmen magazine which he found in the alley where he was forced to sleep that night. He believed that, of course, they're the ones who can help him. Byers initially decides that the man is a fake. Adam believes that he was abducted by aliens. He proves this by producing a small container of blue goo, which he claims he found in every crevice of his body. However, when Byers sniffs this, he realises it's lavender-scented, and therefore decrees that Adam is in fact a fake. However, as they're standing up to leave, Jimmy notices a weird computer pork, apparently surgically implanted in the back of Adam's neck. Byers and Jimmy take Adam back to HQ, where Frohike examines the data port and comes to the conclusion it's some weird form of self-mutilation. Langely analyses the blue goo and says it's actually udder lubricant for milking cows. They have no idea why this was all over the guy's body. Byers, however, thinks they should investigate further, because Burgess was apparently not even aware of the data port, which means someone implanted it on him somehow without his knowledge. When they examine him further using a homemade MRI machine, we see that it's not just a port in the back of his neck. There's a series of wires that extend out from the port and connect all over Adam's brain. The reason for this, of course, they have no idea. The Lone Gunmen plus Jimmy and Adam travel back to the house that Adam believes is his own. They ask him to prove he lives there, and Adam points out a few neighbours and describes what they're going to do before they do it, seemingly proving that he knows everything about it. However, they know he doesn't actually live there. Langely has done full research into Adam and proven that no Adam Burgess exists, particularly not at that address. Reaching Adam's house, they cut the power, and Frohike stays outside of the lookout while the rest enter. Byers has a theory that Burgess knows exactly what's going on in the house and the area because he's been watching it all on a television screen, literally images fed through into his brain through the data port on his neck. Somehow the wires have got crossed inside Adam's brain, and he's actually believing that these are his memories, not images he's seen. As they're investigating the house, things quickly go awry, and it winds up with all of the Lone Gunmen and Adam being arrested. However, we do see a clip of a laboratory somewhere where an assistant reports to a seemingly more senior woman in a lab coat that the house is offline. The doctor tells him to put all the subjects to sleep mode before they come to, and walks over to the other side of the room where there are enormous tanks of blue goo. Each of these tanks has a man inside, breathing through some kind of breathing apparatus, and otherwise seemingly asleep. However, we do notice that one of these tanks is empty, presumably where Adam's come from. While in prison, Langely finally causes Adam to snap. It's through his increased insistence that Adam's life as he knows it doesn't exist. Adam suddenly becomes incredibly violent, attacking Langely and seeming totally different to how he has previously. Luckily for the Lone Gunmen, before things can get too bad, Eves arrives and bails them all out. Back at the headquarters, the Lone Gunmen continue to observe Adam's increasingly erratic behaviour, apparently triggered by someone on television, a salesman called Maniac Marvin who sells various TVs and electronics. The gunmen head out to meet Maniac Marvin and learn how Burgess might know him. However, he claims not to know Adam. This is quickly proven to be false because there is a picture of Adam that the Lone Gunmen don't see on his desk. While this is going on, Eves and Frohike remain at the Lone Gunmen offices, where the doctor we saw previously with the tanks arrives looking for Adam. She claims that her name is Lois and she's actually Adam's wife. As Adam has another rage attack at Maniac Marvin's, Byers and Jimmy finally notice the photo on the counter and steal it. It shows somebody who at least looks a lot like Adam standing with a little person. On returning to the office, Frohike explains to them about Lois's arrival, but tells them all that he lied about knowing where Burgess was because they suspect that it wasn't actually his wife but his keeper. Lois had told them that there was a car accident and Adam just wandered away from the scene. They instead have come to the conclusion that Adam is some kind of lab rat who has been fed fake images into his brain as part of some unknown experiment. Eves and Frohike try to encourage him to remember who he actually is before he goes anywhere with Lois. However, Adam is then triggered once again as he suddenly has an image of Frohike as a little person wrestler. In his fury, he attacks Frohike and tries to kill him. Somehow, the Lone Gunmen come across a videotape of the man that Adam hallucinated. It is a little person wrestler who goes by the name of the dwarf Santini. Apparently, he died some years previously. However, Eves learns that Santini had a daughter and suggests they go visit her. In the meantime, Maniac Marvin arrives at the trailer of the daughter of Santini, who's called Sadie. She is the woman in the picture with Adam. Marvin reminds her that her husband has been gone for a year and she should just finally let him go and divorce him so they can get together. He promises he'll move her out of her home and into a far nicer one. While Sadie doesn't seem particularly pleased to see him, Marvin sweet talks her and the two of them head off into the bedroom. This is the point when the Lone Gunmen plus Eves and Adam and Jimmy all arrive at the trailer. As they arrive, Adam notices the mailbox and is disgusted by her surname, Muckle. He also notices the Cadillac with the vanity plate Maniac M outside and flies into a rage, charging into the trailer as the others run after him. He bursts in on Sadie and Marvin, and as he is dragged away by Jimmy, starts screaming about how he will take out Marvin's other eye. Marvin has previously been wearing an eye patch, and it's now apparent how he lost the first one. Out in the living room, Sadie reveals that Adam's real name is Charlie Muckle, her husband. On this, his memories flood back, as Lois also arrives, concerned that she would have found him there. It's revealed that Muckle is actually a small-time criminal and has a huge list of flaws, particularly his rage issues. Charlie decided he had to change for the benefit of Sadie and entered into Lois's virtual reality program, which is behaviour alteration therapy. Being in the tank is supposed to make him turn into a different person, and Lois defends that it's perfectly legal, though Eves points out the fact that Lois has entered herself in his memories in the role of Adam's wife doesn't seem entirely above board. Charlie chose, it turns out, to be in this program as his only other choice because after he attacked Marvin and blinded him in one eye, he otherwise would have been sent to prison. Charlie does still care about his wife, and because he's so concerned about Sadie, he leaves her on the spot and returns with Lois to get plugged back into his tank. While the episode could end here, unfortunately it does not. The Lone Gunmen return to their base with Eves, and Jimmy is really upset about how things turned out as he thought Sadie and Charlie should end up together as it's clear they love each other. He wants everyone to do something to change the end of the story. While Charlie is put back into his tank at the Research Institute, we see Sadie now in a wedding gown, crying, as Maniac Marvin comes through excitedly to tell her that the divorce has just come through and now they can be married. Marvin is a complete and utter git through this entire sequence. It's clear that he is sexually attracted to Sadie, but doesn't really think highly of her otherwise, yet she believes that this is her only choice as happiness and plans to marry him on the spot. The Lone Gunmen decide to side with Jimmy and try and change things. They go back to the house and connect themselves into the virtual world, kind of, to speak with Charlie. Although they can communicate with him, they of course can't see him, but he can kind of see and hear them. While they try to convince him to go back to the real world and Sadie, they mostly fail at it. Charlie can still remember Sadie at present, but he says his memories will fade over time and that'll be better for everyone. As the police come to take the Lone Gunmen away, they leave Charlie alone to contemplate if he really is happy with this. Ultimately, Charlie decides he is not. He breaks free of the Research Institute and crashes Marvin and Sadie's wedding, which takes place in a wrestling ring. He and Sadie make up just in time to prevent her from being married to someone she doesn't really love. A tearful Jimmy and the others watch the happy ending, knowing that they helped the true lovers get together.
Well, I would say thank you, but unfortunately it's this series.
That episode is amazingly complicated when it comes to summarising it.
Yeah, and I've actually sort of broken what I said I was going to do and just looked up. The very next episode, is written by Vince Gilligan.
Hooray!
Yeah, then I read what it's about.
Hooray!
We'll get to that next time. I don't know. Okay, anyway, this episode. It's definitely, well, it's an improvement on the 3 Men and Smoking Diaper, but I don't know what couldn't be.
I must admit, I thought the first half of this episode actually held up pretty well. It makes a kind of interesting mystery, and unlike 3 Men where I was getting bored very quickly, I was curious to see where this one was going.
Yeah, I think the revelations are really uninteresting and bad. Or, I think more, the episode turns into a completely different genre as it gets towards the end.
Well, when you read the blurb on IMDb, it sounds like it's a kind of alien abduction story. And indeed, Frohike even makes reference to Mulder for the first time in this episode.
Yeah, but as you said, this is paralleling Dead Alive, and guys, you went to his funeral.
Apparently that was an inadvertent spoiler at the time they realised, because this episode aired just before the reveal that Mulder wasn't dead.
Oh, okay.
And Frohike's talking about Mulder like he's alive and someone they can go and speak to, so it caused some continuity issues.
Yeah, but still, Mulder doesn't work for the FBI anymore, guys, so that also doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mm.
We'll put that to one side. I think the problem is that if you, as you said, this synopsis mentions alien abductions, is dispensed with so fast in the episode.
Yeah.
It's not even really a factor.
Well, it's the blue goo is the curio, and when we immediately find out it's udder cream, and I'm not sure why they're submerged in udder cream, but that's aliens out the window, basically.
Yeah. To pick a slightly odd point to start on, I'm going to go with we made a big thing in like Water for Octane about how you don't let the impossible technology persist in your series if you're not going to let it change the world.
Yeah.
The hell is this equipment they've got Jimmy wired into?
You mean the Matrix?
The Matrix. They've wired his brain up in ways that I don't think anyone knows how to do now.
I love it when you actually see what the world looks like for Jimmy,
Yeah.
and it's like PS1 graphics.
Yeah, it's oh wow, I'm in the real one. The resolution's so much higher now. It's like, what is this?
Hello, my highly pixelated wife.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so much to unpack with that as well. Okay, so you've got them living in this really stupid virtual world based on these camera inputs, but you've also modeled the interior of these people's houses despite the fact you'll only be able to have limited views into it because there's no cameras inside the house.
Yet he knows details like where the fridge is.
Yeah, and where the bedroom is, and where the bed is, the orientation of the bed, yada yada yada. You touched on your summary as well, though, and we've got to say, the person running the project has inserted herself into the program as his wife. Is he that desirable that she's just throwing away any kind of professionalism to hook up with this guy? Is she in one of those tanks? What's going on?
She does have the port on the back of her neck.
Yeah, so it's like, lady, I don't think this is legitimate therapy. I think you're getting your kicks with a reverse harem.
I've got more questions about how this virtual reality works because I'm a gamer. And I'd love to know, like, where the loading screens are.
Yeah.
How many times he's just run into an invisible wall because they haven't rendered the next area. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's just baffling. I mean, you also confused when they start to point towards how it works. Is the whole thing where they ask Jimmy how many huts are there on Gilligan's Island?
Yeah, what does that even mean?
The whole point of it is Jimmy knows all these details about Gilligan's Island because he's watched every single episode over and over again.
Okay.
That's what Byers is getting at, is that's why Adam knows every detail about his neighborhood, because he's seen that over and over and over again.
Okay.
I mean, admittedly, Byers doesn't have the whole thing of it because they're not just sitting Adam down in front of a TV screen. They've actually wired his head into a virtual reality. So,
I want to go with the fallibility of memory.
Yeah.
Your brain cannot essentially process everything you see at one time. So, you're seeing glimpses of the world and your brain's kind of putting together to give you a full picture.
Yes. Well, in addition to that, it turns out the eye is actually terrible as a sense organ.
But think of this level of details. It's like me saying, Nick, you've seen The Office a bunch of times. How many pencils are on Dwight's desk?
Damn it, I should have read this ahead of time. I've no idea. Yeah. Though I think it's the big, easy stuff, or the memorable stuff, like the number of huts. Presumably, if you watch Gilligan's Island, that's not too bad.
Okay, how many doors are there in the office?
Oh, God. Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to dispute that it's not a great metric at all, and it's also really just strange.
Mm.
One thing the episode glosses over really hard is, does this neighborhood know this is going on? I don't think we know if the inhabitants of any of those houses, or was it the college student who doesn't wear underwear for some reason, is sort of being observed on camera?
I've got to assume that the neighbours don't know what's going on, because otherwise the guy in the house would have known who Adam was.
Yeah, so at the same time though, Lone Gunmen, there's your story that someone is running this really creepy experiment on a suburban household. This is wet wild but funny, but also not funny.
It's like a neighbourhood peeping Tom, the virtual edition.
Yeah. And then you get into the bit at the end where they're kind of trying to be kind of symbolically dramatic or something, when the Lone Gunmen are talking to him and they can't see him, but he can see them.
Yeah.
And you want to just go, this is kind of embarrassing. What are you doing?
Mm.
And it's a common thing, but Eves, why are you here? We know that they've lost track. They can't write Byers. I don't think they can write Eves anymore either.
True.
Because I don't know why she's here.
Mm.
Or have any relevance to anything. So yeah, the technology is impossible. The ethics just aren't even considered.
Mm.
The effectiveness, I mean, you'd like to think in the X-Files episode, if Mulder encountered this, there'd be a whole thing about how the woman running the project has no training or no qualifications and no right to be doing this.
Mm.
How do you even find out about this? And how isn't this like a scandal? Because she's got to pick these people up from somewhere, and she's got to advertise to them, hasn't she?
Yeah.
And no one has said anything, apparently.
No, true. Maybe it's some government thing. They do say that he did this to escape jail time.
Yeah. Which, well, maybe, but then, again, the Lone Gunmen should be all over it. I don't understand why they're not all over it.
Yeah.
And the bit that got me, the bit that really got me was, they never get to see the lab.
No.
They are taking a load of stuff on someone else's work and they never actually get to see it. But then Adam breaks out of the simulation. How do you do that? How do you disconnect yourself from something you can't experience or can't touch?
The Matrix.
The Matrix has you, Neo. Neo couldn't do it on his own.
Maybe it's the influence of J Blue Afterglow coming in there to release him from it.
I know, that's a crossover that I'd actually get behind.
It was a Lone Gunmen episode?
It was. That's another good point. And I understand to a certain degree why you don't do it, because if you're not au fait with both series, it's absolutely infuriating if you do lots of references back to your spin-off series or your sister series.
Yeah.
But Lone Gunmen have seen something like this in first-person shooter, and that's just not come up. First-person shooter had better graphics than this.
It was also a more realistic, I use the term loosely, but
Yeah.
a more realistic kind of virtual reality, because it was through goggles and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was also limited contained space.
Whereas this is, the sky's the limit, and it's wired into his optic nerves, we have to presume. And how complicated the brain is, you could never make a neural network like this.
No, and it's also, if it's getting data from the video cameras, it means he should be seeing scenes from like up on that telephone graph pole rather than actually walking into the house.
Maybe they're not feeding it directly and they're using it to kind of render a Sim-style building he can walk around.
Well, I think that's the excuse they're going with, but then you have to say, you could model it in a 3D program and not bother with this stuff.
I still want to know how big it is. It's like he goes to work every day. Have we mapped out his entire route to work? Or is this like the weather in Night Vale and his brain just kind of fizzes out to some music and then he comes back to his home?
It's a good question. I mean, you can point to The Matrix, you can point to Dark City, you can point to The Truman Show.
Mm.
and each one of them has different ways they actually curtail the protagonist into their world. The Matrix is probably the most iffy with how it does it.
Yeah.
Whereas Dark City and Truman Show are quite clear on how where the boundaries are and how you're kept away from them.
Yeah.
The Matrix, in the first film, you assume it's the entire planet. Then in Matrix Reloaded, there's some very dodgy comments about there's the city, and there's the highway, and then there's the mountains. And it's like, wait, is that all the Matrix is? It's just like a line somewhere?
We don't talk about the Matrix as sequels.
We don't talk about Matrix as sequels. But the virtual world in this could just be an absolute headache. But I think we have to move on to all the rest of it, which is just staggering.
It's the fact that this is a real ADHD episode, because it could be a lot more simple than it is when you had the whole subplot with Sadie, with Maniac Mike.
Yeah. Yes, it's because we have that. Well, stepping back for now, but there's the running joke before that where he keeps looking at Frohike and saying, "I know you from somewhere."
Yeah.
And eventually it comes down to he's getting him confused with a little person wrestler who is the father of
Santini. Yeah.
who's the father of his wife, who looks nothing like Frohike.
Where once again, it's just a short joke.
Yeah.
Let's just be grateful it's not a butt joke.
Well, okay, I'll give you that one. But it's such a weird thing to put in.
Mm.
And all it seems to lead up to is him tackling Frohike. And then it goes to an ad break and they come back looking at footage of Santini. And I don't know how they got out of him that's what he was seeing. We just gloss over that they found out what he's elucidating.
He was wearing like a swimming costume and goggles. Ah, yeah, we know who that is. Yeah.
And the Maniac Mike thing is, he's a spoof of various other TV personalities and various other shows you've seen. I think we're too young to have seen it. Or I think also, I don't think they did it in this country, but America suddenly had the insane people with their prices reductions thing.
Thinking like Malfunctioning Eddie in Futurama.
Yeah, he's kind of like the sci-fi spoof version.
Mm.
As far as I'm aware, these people did exist. They did do TV adverts like this.
I've only ever seen it as like a parody on sitcoms and things, but I presume that parody's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah. And it feels... I don't know if you still got them at this era. It feels really odd. But he also feels... I don't know, not able to sort of... He doesn't actually... I don't know, there's something off about the whole thing. It doesn't feel right.
Mm.
It's such a weird... And as you said, it's a weird extraneous detail for an episode that doesn't need it.
Yeah.
You don't need the would-be other lover who has successfully seduced your wife multiple times. Because that doesn't really factor into anything, does it?
And also despite the fact he's repellent.
Yeah.
It's particularly... You don't really get the full feel of it until that kind of scene where she's getting ready for the wedding and he's just vile.
Yeah. It's like, well, what are you doing, lady? Is there literally no one else in the world? Is it the comedy trappings again? Is it, at one stage, this simply was... his wife is being seduced by another guy. Just put it that way. And then someone said, no, we need more stuff. So they said, okay, so he's one of those crazy price reduction people. It's like, no, not good enough. Okay, his wife is a little person. Yes, that's what we're going to go with.
Daughter of a little person wrestler.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that little person wrestling is a thing on this basis.
Yeah, it's just levels of detail the episode doesn't need, because you've got... because it's... I think we're coming back to that whole... The premise of the show is broken, because the conspiracy stuff doesn't get a look in.
It feels a bit mean-spirited humour again, which we've mentioned on this
Yes.
show before, because it's portraying something that's unusual as being something abnormal.
Yes, and just inherently funny because, oh, of course it's funny.
Yeah, oh, that's weird, haha, hilarious. Little person wrestling.
And they get married in the ring.
In the ring, yeah, because
why?
this is her life, apparently. It's like, ugh.
There's no other aspect to her except wrestling.
Yeah, and it's not even clear if she's a wrestler. Her dad was.
That's true, actually. Yeah, that is also the bit that doesn't actually.
But
gel
apparently,
properly.
this is her life now because she can't have any more development beyond that. It's like, oh god, this is abysmal.
Yeah, and then his anger management issues just like turn on and turn off depending on the sequence you're doing.
I'm picturing it like a kind of flickering light or something like that. Is there are various triggers that are breaking his conditioning.
Yeah.
But some of them are more obvious than others because, okay, I can understand seeing Maniac, whatever his name is.
Mike, I think.
Maniac Mike, or whatever he's called.
Yeah.
Seeing him again being a trigger because he's something from your past life.
Yeah.
Ditto hearing his name, seeing Sadie. Langley being a bit obnoxious to him. No.
No. And Frohike, just Frohike in general.
Yeah, he really doesn't look like that wrestler in any way, but we'll roll with that, I guess.
If we must. You just want to say the series is a mistake. But it didn't have to be.
I did think this was a nice idea. I liked the initial setup.
Yes.
It was pretty...
The hook's good.
Yeah, until about halfway through when we started seeing Lois and realising what this was all about. I thought the initial idea behind it showed promise this time. I was optimistic.
Yes.
And it was better than 3 Men in a Smoking Diaper.
Yes.
Not that takes much.
No. I think the other thing that gets me about it a bit is Jimmy wants credit for this story. Or he wants his name in the Lone Gunmen newspaper.
Yeah, because he completely idolises them.
Yeah. It's one of the ones where you kind of want to just say gently, do you understand what a publisher is? Because if you're funding the printing of the magazine, you're the publisher. Your name should be on there somewhere as the publisher.
True. He's more the financier than the publisher, though.
He is, but I think the distinctions are kind of just stretched. His name should be in there somewhere.
If it was someone more savvy than Jimmy, you could say that was a kind of condition of this.
Yes.
Is I need to be acknowledged somewhere, on the inside front cover, that sort of thing.
But I think the other part of Jason to that, though, is it's, again, that for some reason the series is struggling to involve the Lone Gunmen in an organic way. Because this was Jimmy having to take the phone call. He happened to take the phone call because Adam Burgess was run out of his house. He's run out of his house and slept in a dumpster where he found a copy of the Lone Gunmen.
True.
So despite the fact that this is kind of their wheelhouse, their involvement is largely due to an increasing series of unlikely coincidences.
Yes.
Given there are 2,000 copies of that thing in circulation. So when Byers and Byers and Jimmy show up, they should actually be able to figure out which copy and who the Lone Gunman was thrown out by.
True, yeah.
That's just brush that to one side as well. I don't have a real point there, just sort of just the inconsistency is annoying.
Yeah, true.
But then Jimmy, we mentioned it last time, but Jimmy wants to be a Gonzo journalist because he doesn't accept the reality of the situation they find themselves in. I mean, admittedly, yes, it's the right call to not let Sadie marry Manic Mike. At the same time, yeah, you're meant to be a journalist, Jimmy. You let them go ahead and do their thing.
Yeah.
I know that you've used Eve to hack into the cameras, and you're kind of lucky that the people who actually live in that house don't come out and ask you what you're doing talking to thin air in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think I have anything else for this episode. I think just run out.
Yeah, it's a weird, disconnected episode that just isn't satisfying in the end.
No. And, I mean, I keep harking back to the premise sounded interesting. Because I think it's not the Lone Gunman's wheelhouse, even though it briefly became their wheelhouse in season 8.
Mm.
And I kept protesting that it wasn't their wheelhouse. And this seems to confirm it, because they're not saying they're not going to get hold of Mulder until they have something more.
Yeah.
But even then, it's not something they really believe in. But seeing how the Lone Gunman would deal with an alien abduction scenario would be more interesting. I don't understand why we don't actually have that episode.
Yeah, just to show how they'd approach this differently to Mulder running in with his tinfoil hat on.
Yeah, and given the fact we know that David Duchovny does get a cameo in this series, it's also odd that this wasn't an opportunity to do that crossover at this stage.
Apart from that, he's currently dead for tax reasons.
Yeah, but I get the increasing impression that I don't actually know. The episodes were sort of constructed and filmed with no understanding of how the broadcast was going to interpolate.
Yeah,
with
I've
the
got to
X-Files.
assume that.
So there's no reason why Mulder couldn't have shown up while dead at this point.
Mm.
On retrospect, maybe we should have interspersed these with season 8 because it might have been a bit more bearable.
We'll get through it.
We'll get through it.
You've not got that many more to go.
No, I mean, we've hit basically the midway mark. Sort of. halfway through the next episode, I think, will be our midway point.
Yep, that's correct.
So, shall we just get out of here while we still live?
Good plan. The next episodes, I guess, are going to be Planet of the Frohikes and Maximum Byers.
They are. I remember Maximum Byers because I think at the time you were defending it when we first watched it by, it's not government conspiracies, it's all the conspiracies. And it's like, this isn't a conspiracy at all. This is just weird. But Planet of the Frohikes is written by Vince Gilligan. So, a lot riding on this one. However, we have our pattern.
Please be good.
We have our pattern. If Vince can't save this, then that quote from him of how proud he is of the series, Vince, you don't have to defend this anymore. It's done. You can stop trying to make people think it's good.
Yeah.
In the meantime, if you would like to passionately defend Lone Gunmen in a different way, we'd still love to hear from you. If you would like to try and tell us how we're not intelligent enough to get 3 men and a smoking diaper, please tell me why and how. I need to know. Or that Madame is perfectly fine and not a whole load of very strange jokes stacked on top of each other. Our email address is thingsatgetstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media. We're on Twitter and Tumblr at GetStrange42, on Mastodon at GetStrange42@universedon.com, or on Facebook, where you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch podcast. Additionally, if you're not sick of my voice yet, I also stream live on Twitch TV under the name AdverseCamber42. I'm live Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM GMT and Saturdays at 5 PM GMT, where I'm currently playing Yakuza 3 Remastered and Life is Strange Double Exposure.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsgettingstrange, where for as little as $3 a month you can have access to our bonus episodes and help us keep the lights on. Our bonus episodes include a complete Let's Play of the first X-Files game, we're starring Craig Gilmore, and where his bones are cleaned very thoroughly. I'm not well sure I'm fixating on that death, but it was very funny.
I do quite like that one.
Our theme music is A Vision by Kevin MacLeod. You can find it on Compotech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember...
I'm with 60 Minutes.